And we're not hearing Mercedes. So maybe Kim, if you want to start us off.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Because there were two mutes, so I wanted to make sure I got them both. My name is Kim Hagler, and I graduated in the MTax program, Mark, maybe 2018. Was that the year?
27
or 2017? Yeah, I was trying to remember just a moment ago, and no luck. So I work at UPS for the past 6 years in the tax accounting and reporting team. And I mean, I just love it. Tax has been, I worked in book accounting for nearly 20 years before I switched to tax, and tax has been much more dynamic and fulfilling career for me.
Thank you, Kim. Mark, you're the next person in my view. So if you'll introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Fourm. I graduated with, we don't know when it was, but it was a couple of years ago from the MTax program. I worked at a mid-sized, smaller accounting firm here in Atlanta, being kind of just more of a generalist. And over the past year, I've transitioned to a more specialized state and local tax role at Dixon Hughes Goodman here in Atlanta. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. Ren.
Hi everyone, my name is Ren Ellington. I graduated last December. So prior to this program, MTax, I was an attorney for about 9 years, 7 years. And throughout the program, I got to learn more about the tax profession. And before I graduated, I was hired by DHG as an international senior. So I've been working there since last August. I'm also finishing up my last section of the CPA exams.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about the CPA exam later in our session. Christian, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, hello, my name is Christian, and I graduated last December with Ren, and I'm actually doing a course that we did last December. That's actually what I'm working with right now, basically. I'm a tax analyst with ASR Tax Analytics, and we basically are into government contract tax analytics. And
great.
Basically, that's all.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, we'll talk some more about data analytics today as well. So Christian is our resident expert on that. Michael, if you're on the call, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Michael Campbell. Graduated with my MTax in 2013, so I feel like maybe the old head on the call here. I am a senior manager in the international tax group at Crow here in Atlanta.
Great, thank you. And Mercedes. We can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
It does look like your mute button is on. Wait, there it went.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My name is Mercedes Bridges. I'm a tax associate with Grant Thornton. I recently started there in October of 2021. Graduated from the NTAX program in December 2020. Looking to finish my final 2 CPA exams and looking forward to speaking with you all today.
Great, thank you. So I really appreciate our alumni taking up their time. I mentioned just before the noon hour, they are very busy with tax right now because it's busy season, and some of them will have to leave a little early, but I'll be on the call until 1:30 to be sure that we answer all questions about the program. Again, I want this to be organic if possible. So students, we have undergrads, prospective MTAC students, and we have admitted MTAC students on the call, just so our panelists know. And so to our participants, if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I think it would probably be better to match pair relative to the conversation and answer those related questions instead of holding those until the end. So the first set of questions relate basically to what our professionals are doing right now in practice. And we won't hear from every professional for every question because we just don't have time. But maybe if a couple of you will talk about your area of specialization and how you ended up in that particular area of specialization.
I guess I can take a stab at this since I'm more recently specialized, I guess. Like I said before, I spent about 5 years doing an internship and then on to staff and then senior at a smaller firm where I was more of a generalist, where I got experience doing just about every type of tax return there is, and found that I actually liked state and local tax. I kind of found an interest for it, and then ended up having a connection at DHG. And long story short, ended up coming on here as a senior here in the SALT program or SALT department, I guess, and just really actually have enjoyed it because it's a little bit more of a, it's funny, I tell people it's working in SALT, it's definitely, it seems easier, I guess, because you don't have that broad range of all the federal stuff and all that, but then you realize that you have 50 states that you have to deal with, and every state does everything different, but it constantly keeps me engaged, it constantly keeps me challenged, and I really like that.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Sure, I can. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Oh, I was Christian. All right, I'll go. So I work in tax accounting, and like I said when I was introducing myself, I worked in book accounting for many years. So it was a natural fit for me to go into tax accounting. So I work on, like our 481A adjustments when we adopt a new accounting standard, things like that, big calculations, and also our big journal entries that we have to prepare for tax. And so I think that, I was blessed, I guess, because I took an internship at UPS when I was just applying for the MTAX program. And it was on the federal compliance team. Well, like 3 months later, compliance and tax accounting merged into one group. And so I have just intentionally put myself in the way of a lot of tax accounting work because I enjoyed it so much more than the compliance.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I'll just elaborate a little bit on what she said, particularly for the undergraduate students. So if you're currently or recently have completed the financial reporting series, what Kim does is ASC 740 deferred taxes. So Kim is very knowledgeable for both GAAP and tax accounting. And, so if you have an affinity for deferred taxes, that is a huge area, both in a corporate environment and in the public accounting arena as well. Yeah. And then maybe if we'll hear from one of our international people, so either Mike or Ren.
Yeah, I can go. My story is a lot like Mark's. I started at a smaller firm here in Atlanta, right out of undergrad, and I was getting my master's at the same time, and I did kind of general public accounting, federal, state, but I always wanted to do more international, so I just asked for more of that work, and I thought I would like it. I did like it, and then I kind of hit a ceiling working at a local firm where you just couldn't specialize. So very similar to Mark, I went to a larger, mid-tier, not big four, ended up doing a stint in a Fortune 500 tax department, and then came back to Crow, where, you know, with the larger firms, you have the ability to specialize. But yeah, I recommend it. You can probably get further ahead faster by specializing right out of the gate. But getting that kind of general sense for you're doing some tax accounting, you're doing federal, you're doing partnerships and corporations, I think gives you a much better sense of where you want to go with your career if you can see a lot of it in that first couple of years, even if it, you know, slows down your career progress by a year, maybe, you know, you'll catch up.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I'll just say the larger the firm, the more likely you're gonna immediately what I refer to as being pigeonholed. So they're going to put you in a certain group and train you well, and you are going to be the expert relative to that particular area of taxation. So maybe for those that have a few more years experience, could you describe or discuss something that has been really hard for you to navigate in the profession? You know, and that could either be a client relationship, your personal career within the profession, anything like that.
Yeah, I think I can go on that. I think with mine initially, I was into database administration. So just like Professor Jones, I had that interest in database or analytics products and then accounting. So trying to merge them, I think, was where the navigation was a little bit difficult, because if you were trying to get a job, it was like, oh, most of your experience is in database administration, but you want an accounting job or you want a taxation job. So I think that was where, but after taking the MTax, I think it gave me direction as to how to go in, or which area of taxation I should be looking at.
Great, thank you. And then the third and final question relative to this set or topic relates to having a mentor. So maybe Mercedes, do you want to talk a little bit about Grant Thornton? I know it's got some great mentoring programs internal to the organization. So if you want to address that, and then if there are any other panelists that have any insights, feel free to follow up to Mercedes.
Can you hear me? Okay, just want to make sure. Well, yes, Grant Thornton absolutely has good mentor programs. As soon as you accept an offer, you are paired with a buddy who has experience at the firm, at least a senior. You're able to ask questions before officially starting the firm. And that really helps, because if you've never been in public accounting, you hear the stories, and you hear about the work, the long hours. So you need someone to kind of comfort you on that journey. And so I was paired with someone who was very knowledgeable, very sincere about everything. And then once I actually joined the firm, you're also paired with a manager and a partner who you consistently have meetings with, and they kind of talk to you and really advocate for you. For me, I like to work with partnerships. And so when I told the partner that, he was able to advocate on my behalf to get me more of that work. And the manager really told me about her experience and being a woman in public accounting and trying to have a family, someone you can actually talk to about those real life experiences and not just the work. It makes a very big difference. And Grant Thornton provided that stepping into the door. So.
Anyone else on the panel want to talk about mentors or advocates?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for students, I really wish I had a mentor to be there for me to answer all of my questions. Like, I have some kind of a somewhat unique experience. I was in legal practice for 9 years before I started my job at DHG. I always knew that I wanted to do tax, but I was sort of lost, like, where do I go? Until I applied to this program and I got to talk to more, tax professionals. Oh, then I realized, okay, like public accounting firms are an option for me. I didn't even realize that 10 years ago when I graduated from law school. So I think mentors are very important, both at the stage where you're still a student and when you first start off at public accounting, for sure. And I can't agree more. As a new mother, I have a 3-year-old and I need to balance a lot of stuff like studying for the CB exam, taking care of my son, and working all the time. Like it was really, really nice to have multiple mentors at my current firm who are also mothers who are, balancing all sort of stuffs. So it's really nice to have someone to talk to.
Thank you. And I'll just mention, even in academic literature, there's some research about having mentors versus advocates, so you can have a mentor, but you really want an advocate, which means you want somebody who's going to go to the table for you. So as Mercedes mentioned, her mentor was able to get her more partnership work, so on and so forth. So for those of you that are still students, we do have both formal and informal mentoring opportunities within the Career Advancement Center. So if you're interested in that, then I would encourage you to reach out to Ms. Thomas, who's on the call today. And if she isn't the appropriate person, she will point you in the correct direction on that. So again, it's never too soon to start with that mentoring. And I'm going to pause for just a moment. I don't see any questions in the chat box, but do we have any questions before we move on? Because this is a good segue into our next topic. Okay, so Roland, I think your hand's up. Go ahead.
Yes, I do. This question is for Ren. She just mentioned that she wished she had a mentor to guide her in with tax field. What did you say you applied for? How did you get assistance with guiding you to, what tax area you should go?
Yeah, I was talking about more like toward the earlier of my career when I first graduated from law school. I knew I could go into an LLM program, which is the Master of Law, to study more on taxation, but I didn't want to incur more debt. So I just went on and take the job offer I had at the time. It wasn't tax. So for a few years, I was doing something I didn't really like. Even though I was at big law firms, I wasn't really happy. I knew I wanted to do tax. So it was really just, it was a coincidence. I just got to talk to someone who was in the MTax program and who is also an attorney. And she introduced me to this program. So that was what I was talking about. But as for your question, I think you're talking about like which area of tax you want to go into, right? I think this program is a great place where you get to try each area at some degree, to some degree, and then you will find what you like the most. Like for me, I was recruited by the professor who taught international tax, Don Dismuke. I think this is the perfect area for my skill set, legal and accounting and tax. Like right now, I'm mostly doing consulting work just because of my legal background. I write memos, I perform legal research, on very complex tax issues. But I also assist with tax provision and compliance work because I can do the work. It's just the perfect area for me to go into. So I think it's great for you to, try different classes and talk to the professors. They are very, very helpful and they want to help you. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ren. Any other questions? Again, I don't see anything in the chat box. I don't see any other hands up. Oh, okay, so we will go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I got here a little bit late, I'm sorry.
No worries. We're flexible.
So mainly I had to ask for, I wanted to ask in regards to tax planning for corporate, what goes into your, what goes into your thinking, and what have you learned from GSU that would help you along that path?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of people sitting in the corporate environment. So Kim and Christian, if you want to have anything to add.
So, I'm sorry. The question is, what goes into the tax planning process at a corporate level? Is that basically the question? And what I got from GSU that kind of helps me out? I don't really work on planning that much. I do work on profit plans. So like projecting our taxes, our tax balance sheet over the next 5 years or whatever. But there is a lot of planning that goes on that I'm just at my level not involved with. That's mostly at the higher levels, the director level. They do a lot of the planning activities at UPS. So I'm not at that level yet.
Great, thank you, Kim. And then Christian, are you already seeing some things by working in data analytics that support tax planning at your employer?
Yes. So basically, like if you look at especially one of the tools that we did in our last course, that was Tableau. It's really instrumental when it comes to tax analytics and planning. As far as like, so we are into basically helping out the state and the federal with their taxes during the tax season. So issues like Tableau, like tools like Tableau is like really helpful when it comes to my job here.
Great, thank you. So I will just say also generically relative to Duncan's question is that the landscape has changed for taxation. You know, historically, a lot of it was compliance work, or what we characterize as that, which would be completion of tax returns. And contingent upon the firm size, you still may end up doing that, but the larger firms are outsourcing those and are using robotic process automation to complete part of the return work, which then opens you up to do more tax planning and consulting. So I want to make sure students understand that, you know, being a tax accountant doesn't mean that all you're doing is preparing tax returns. Okay, it's a lot more exciting than that. And I'm sure each of our panels can speak to that better than me. But again, it has definitely changed a lot in the last 5 years because of technology. So our students, you know, are being placed at large and local firms and or corporate environments, and they may do a tiny bit of compliance work, but usually they move on to other stuff. So I think that was a very good question Duncan had, and thank you for allowing us to share that. If any of the panelists have additional feedback relative to, you know, that change or paradigm shift that we're seeing in the profession about moving away from compliance work and doing more consulting and planning with your client base if you're working in public accounting.
Sometimes I miss the days of putting my headphones in and just keying things into the tax software. That was, you know, we call that easy billable hours. And, you know, it was easier. You're using your brain a lot more when doing consulting, taking on greater challenges. So it makes the job a lot more interesting. And, you know, you don't get bored doing the same thing all the time. You know, I've always, ever since like day one, been wanting to improve processes so that I wasn't spending a lot of my time doing something that a computer could do or that could be done, you know, some better way. So yeah, Linda, that's exactly right. We do spend a lot more time on planning and consulting in the international arena. That means more time on like restructuring projects or modeling out, you know, different tax benefit scenarios. So it is more interesting. less fluffy hours that you could just sit and key in all day.
Great, thank you. So Sarah has posted a question. It's an excellent segue because the next theme or topic relates to being a graduate student. So I was going to kick off with a question, and Kim touched on this. She did an internship while she was in the program, and many of our students worked while they were in the program. And that is exactly Sarah's question. So how hard is it to manage working full-time with this program? Do you have any recommendations? And Sarah is going to be joining us this fall while she is concurrently gainfully employed in public accounting. So any insights from our panelists?
I can definitely speak to this because I did work full time and attend the MTEX program. And then the following year after I graduated, I did the CPA exams that year while working full time, all 4 exams in the same year. And the recommendation that I have is just be disciplined. You know, I mean, it's all about reaching that goal. So just know that you're giving up your Saturdays and Sundays for a couple of years. You know, that's what happened for me. And that's because there was a certain level that I wanted to, you know, to perform at. And in order to do that, I had to give 100% of my focus to work while I was there. And then to my classes in the evening was when I was there. So the only time for me to do my homework was on my weekends. So.
Mark, if I remember correctly, you worked for the duration that you were in the program too.
I did. When I started the MTAX program, I was, yes, I had already, well, I started my internship right after I started the MTAX program, but I was working in a full-time, you know, role during the program. And like Kim said, you have to, you know, balance your time. You have to take, the only other recommendation that I can give is try not to overload it. School is very important. And so don't overload your course schedule just to get done with school. It's not worth it, in my opinion. I know, Lynn, you and I have had some conversations, I think, before of not wanting to overload the students in the sense of too many classes in one semester. You'll get much more out of each of your classes if you kind of take your time through it. But as far as the internship goes, I know I've always said that the internship was the greatest thing I did. I was coming in, I thought, intern, I don't know, what am I going to get? Coffee for people and do that kind of stuff? I could say I never did that during my internship. I can't speak to other places, but no, it's, for me, the internship experience was exactly the same as the staff experience. And so I guess maybe I might be leading on into something else there, but that to say, it's doable. It's very doable.
Yes, I would just emphasize, because as Mark mentioned, he and I have had discussions on this. So I use a metaphor of a plate. You know, everybody's got different things on their plate, and you have to figure out how to balance it. So for some students, maybe they're just full-time students. So they're going to take, 3 classes a semester. But if you're working full-time, that may not work for you. Some semesters, 2 classes may be viable. And in other semesters, when you're in the middle of busy season, maybe 1 class is what you want to take. So we have a flexible format in the program. The minimum is 16 months, but you can spread out your curriculum for longer than that. And again, we want you to get the most out of the program as possible. Okay, I'll be quiet. So any of our other panelists, actually, I think all of you have worked concurrent with completion of the program. So any other insights?
I also did full-time while doing it. And I think one, just as Mark said, you plan just at the beginning, just make sure you don't put too much courses in a semester. So for me, for instance, what I did was every summer, I didn't take any courses during the summer. So I made sure I did the first 2 prerequisites and did 2, and that. So it was always a little bit easier for me to combine that with my job.
I was just going to say, it's hard to give 100% to 2 different things. And you're going to get pressure from work to be giving 120%. So just know that you have to know when to say no and like put a boundary. I'm dedicating this many hours to work and this many hours to school, and I'm going to get the most out of my school. People will tell you like, oh, the degree is not important, it's just for your CPA. My MTAX has come back to help me so much in my career. And I'm really glad that I was, spent time focusing on the classes. Maybe other masters, if you're talking to other people in your accounting firm that don't have the MTAX, they might not view it that way, but this particular program, you want to dedicate the time to it. And if that means your career progression slows down while you're doing it, you'll catch up really quick after you're done.
Yeah, so to that point, what I hear from our employers and recruiters is that our MTAX students are here relative to other tax professionals at the entry point, which means the students that have completed the MTAX are promoted more quickly than their peer group. And so, there's always a monetary change relative to that as well. And then you get to do something that's more interesting or more involved. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so the next question, for our panelists, if you reflected on your novice self as a graduate student, is there anything that you might have done differently? So we're looking for words of wisdom for our aspiring MTAX students.
I probably
All
wouldn't
right, I guess
have
I can
worked
go.
and done the CPA exam while going to school, and just like focused on 100% of each. Maybe getting like a part-time job where I wasn't just doing this for like 3 years.
I'd echo the CPA exam. Do it as early as you can.
And Kim, I think you were going to add something.
That's okay. I think when we do this question, every time I attend the panel, I say, like, my words of wisdom is just be patient with yourself, because I can remember, coming into, a totally new area from GAAP accounting or financial accounting to tax accounting, and just feeling like, wow, I don't think I'm smart enough for this, like all these people around me, they know so much, and it just takes time to get there, to learn the things that you have to learn to where, you become the subject matter expert, in that area. So it's really easy to look at those people and think, I'll never get to that level, but just be patient and diligent and you will get there.
So a few of you have already touched on CPA exam, and that was another of my questions. So, again, what recommendations do you have for our students about CPA exam preparation and then timing? What do you perceive as the best time to take it? So on and so forth.
So I am finishing up the last section of my CPA exam. I started this journey when I first started my public accounting job and when I was finishing up the MTAX program. And I can tell you that was horrible. Don't do it. Start the exam as soon as possible. As soon as you get that 20 accounting credits, do it, because life is just going to get more complicated along the way. So do it early. And I just want to say it might feel impossible in the beginning because all of the exams are very hard, but you can do it. It's just slow and steady and you're going to win the game.
I agree with Rand. I can say that after taking those 2 initial courses in the MTAX program, I think it's tax research, and I forgot the other one, Dr. Jones, the first 2 that we have to take entering the program.
It's advanced Fed tax, which is an entities overview and really sets you up for the reg section.
Exactly. As soon as I completed those 2 courses, I took reg and passed it with no problem. and then was able to continue on. So I'm down to FAR and audit. And I can say that if you're thinking about joining public accounting, at least for me, try to knock those out before busy season begins. Because you will have to manage your time, because you do want to have a life outside of work, but also be accomplished in your career. So just pace yourself and try to get things done in between slower seasons and before you start, if you can.
I just want to add here, since Bridget mentioned this, I would recommend that you start with FAR, because that is the section that has the most amount of materials. And you have 18 months to finish. Once you pass one, you have 18 months to finish the other 3. So I would recommend kicking off with the hardest part, unless you think maybe another section might be even harder than FAR, like audit. I took FAR and audit already. And even though audit had a little less materials, it was just odd. To me, it felt like it was from another planet, just because I'm not in audit. And I've heard you either have a tax brain or you have an audit brain. I think I just have a tax brain. So yeah, so my advice here is to start off with the hardest part.
Great. Anybody else on the panel?
I was just gonna say, tailor your CPA exam schedule to what you think. Look at it. A lot of people do very well starting with FAR. Others want to get like practice to build up to the big boss, like a video game. So if you're already working, talk to your career coach and figure out what you think works best for you, time-wise, like with your busy seasons and all that. I'm not disagreeing, right? Most people, I think, do best starting.
Great, thanks. So we have a question in the chat box, Ron. That's an excellent question. I was just making some notes to myself. So I'll very briefly, excuse me, interject this, but I'll talk in more detail after the 1 p.m. hour, because I want to make sure that our participants get as much time with our professionals as possible. But in Georgia, once you complete your bachelor's degree, the 120 hours, but you do have to have those upper level credit hours for licensure, but not to sit for the exam. So as soon as you finish your bachelor's, as long as you've got 24 general business credit hours. So if you're an undergrad business major, you're going to have that. So you can start sitting for the exam once you complete the undergraduate degree. Then the other thing that's on the horizon is that the CPA exam is changing beginning January of 24. And again, after the 1 o'clock hour, I'll go into depth about that. But I don't want to detract from our professionals' time right now. So thank you. That's an excellent question. So anyone else relative to the CPA exam before we move on to our next topic?
So I had a question. One of the panelists mentioned if he could do it again, that he would work part-time and as well as study for the CPA exam. Could he go into how he would do that, or what would his rationale behind that be?
Yeah, so that was me. Thanks for the question. I was very competitive with the people I was in an internship class with when I first started, and they were ahead of me in school a little bit, and I wanted to get my MTAX and pass the CPA exam at the same time as they did. So I was taking a bunch of classes, I was working full time and studying for the CPA exam all at the same time. And you can't, it's hard to give your full attention to 2 things, let alone 3. And it was all about being competitive and trying to be on the same pace as everybody else. And what I'll say about that is after 3 or 4 years, it all evens out and your skills will speak for themselves, and it's not a race. Your career is your path. So just from a mental health perspective, either doing like a part-time internship while you're in school, giving you more time to study, more time to focus on classes while still getting some money. Or if you can, survive off some loans or live with family, whatever you can do to not try to do everything at once. It's not a race. And I've seen a lot of people burn out of this field because they try to do so much in those first 2 years. And yes, the paycheck is very attractive, but if you can put it in perspective, paycheck's going to be a lot higher in a couple of years anyway. So like if you can just get by on a reduced budget while you're in school, focus on school and focus on CPA exam, and then you'll be able to dedicate yourself to the job and rise a lot faster, like Glenn was saying.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions from our participants for the panelist relative to CPA exam? Okay, well then we're going to transition to the next topic. The other thing I'll say about CPA exam, I'll talk more about data analytics at the 1 o'clock hour relative to the new exam format and how the program can prepare you for that. Okay, so this next set of questions is about being prepared relative to networking, interviewing, resume writing, things of that nature. Okay, so the first question I have for the panelists, what would be your recommendation for students as to when they should begin networking if they plan to make a career change? Again, a lot of our students are already working. So what's your recommendation, panelists?
I'd say right away.
Go ahead, Kim.
Right away. You want to get to know some tax people. A lot can happen as far as job opportunities opening up and things like that. So you really want to get to know the people in the community as soon as you possibly can.
I guess to piggyback off that, if you're doing this call, you're already starting somewhat. But my answer is always, it's never too early. It's not what you know in life, it's who you know. I firmly believe that. So, I mean, what you know plays a big role, but so, never is too early.
That's exactly what I tell students, go ahead and participate in career fairs, even if you are not on the market. It does two things. It helps build out your network of who you know, as to what Mark just said. It's about who you know, not what you know. And then also it helps develop your interpersonal skills, or what we refer to as soft skills. So you become more comfortable having a conversation with someone that you don't really know, how to ask the appropriate questions relative to the employment opportunities at that particular organization, so on and so forth. So our panelists, do you have anything else to add relative to networking?
I would say build a close relationship with your professors as well. I can say for me, the SALT professor in the program, Veronica Caputa, recruited me to Grant Thornton, and also network with your peers in the classroom, because they may already be working at a firm, or they may branch off after graduation and get in certain positions where they can pull you onto their platform as well.
Great. Thank you, Mercedes. Yeah, so we've already heard two of our panelists. So both Ren and Mercedes were recruited by some of our faculty. And again, at the 1 o'clock hour, I'll tell you a little more about the faculty that teach in our program. But Ren, I think maybe you have something to add.
I just have a question for you, Dr. Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started the program, we had this Tau Alpha Chi, that organization where
it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay,
Yep.
but they had like every year they would invite firms to like people from different firms to an event with some of our students. Then like the students get to talk to
Yes.
managers, even partners at firms. Do we still have events like that?
Yeah, yes. So we're still doing that. Historically, everything was in one day where when we met in person, we had the MTAX alumni panel as the kickoff or starter. And then we had the networking of meeting the firms where the students interacted with the prospective employers. And we specifically asked for that event that in addition to a recruiter, that the organization also send a tax professional to the event so that students can really hear from the professional what he or she does day in and day out relative to that tax role. Since we've been online, we've bifurcated the two. So we do the MTAX alumni panel in the spring semester. And then last fall in October, after the filing deadline, we had a virtual meet the firms event just for tax. And we don't have the date set, but we are already talking about that opportunity for this fall. So students that end up subscribing to the MTAX program or any of our other programs, whether you're undergrad or graduate, our firms still hire tax professionals out of those. But as I mentioned earlier, you're going to set yourself up for greater success in completing the MTAX program. But yes, so we still have those things going on. It's just, under Career Advancement Center and not Tau Alpha Chi.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on. So again, we've got students on the panel from various organizations. So maybe if each of you could briefly speak to how someone might best prepare to interview at your organization. Kim, you want to start? Okay, go ahead, Mercedes.
I can say for my interview with Grant Thornton, they let you know who you will be interviewing with. And I was able to research them on LinkedIn, see their past education experiences. Did we have any mutual connections? And bring that up within the interview. So that worked out well. And again, Veronica Caputo, within the MTAX program, was able to kind of give me some insight on who I was interviewing with. And that really helped the conversation flow. And I made sure that if, again, I'm interested in working with partnerships, that I was able to bring the knowledge I had learned in the program up for discussion. So they knew that I was at least had base knowledge in the subject.
Thank you. Kim, you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. We don't really use interns anymore officially on my team, but we do borrow them sometimes from the international team when we're in year-end close. But so mostly when at an entry level, we're concerned that you're 100% want to know that you are comfortable in Excel. So we usually give like a practice, kind of assessment. But then as you get, higher levels, we start asking for, a written assignment to be turned in. We want to see a piece of your writing and things like that. So it depends on what level you're on. But we often talk about on our team about like that initial interview is just kind of like the airport test is what my boss calls it. Aaron calls it. It's like, would I be okay if I was trapped in an airport for like 18 hours with this person? So we're really looking, for, just to be able to converse with, with people, have a pleasant demeanor, like you're going to bring optimism and positivity, everything. So things like that go a long way, but definitely skill with data analytics and especially Excel at the internship level. We're using a lot of Excel.
Thank you, Christian. Why don't you go next?
Yeah, as far as our organization is concerned, I think preparing for an interview, I think the first thing, as Mercedes said, you research about the company. And then if you get to know the interviewers too, you try to look at their background. Then in my case, I think one of the things that helped me was talking about the project that we did in analytics, which we had already done like the previous semester. So my interview basically came to be on, most of the questions came from the project when I started talking about it, because it relates to the exact job that I was going to do. And then one other thing you should be looking out for too is if there are any major changes in the code or regulations. So I was asked about, one of the major questions too I was asked was about the TCJA and some of the major changes and what I think the effects were. So I think these are some of the most important things you should be looking out for in the interview.
That's excellent. Thank you. So Ren, I'm going to let you go next because I think you have to leave soon.
I'm just gonna say we are hiring a lot of interns right now and associates. So if you're interested, please apply to DHG. We have a lot of job postings out there right now. And if you need a link, please just let me know. I'll send you the link.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I think DHG has a Handshake account, so they can post inside Handshake and students can see those.
Dr. Jones, again, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned at some point DHG is planning on like a on-campus recruiting, right? With the MTax students, maybe?
Well, I think that would fall under the auspices of that fall Meet the Firms event. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when that would happen. Yeah.
Because I was trying to see if there's anything I can help with, facilitating the recruiting.
Yeah. So you and Mark are at the same firm now. So y'all need to tag team. And there's another alum that came from the same firm that Mark did going into DHG. So there are 3 of you there.
Okay, that's
yeah.
great.
So you need to twist some arms in your recruiting department. Yeah. So what happens, students, is that certain firms have targets, goals, as they refer to it. And so they have distinct relationships with specific universities. Now, that does not mean that they won't hire students from the non-target schools. It's just that they don't have a presence on campus. So historically, DHG, I do not think has had a presence on campus, but they do hire our students. So again, we've got 3 MTax alums that I'm aware of that are working for DHG right now. Great, thank you. All right, and then Mike, do you have any thing that you want to add about, if a student wanted to pursue employment at Crow?
Yeah, come on. We're hiring too. Everybody in public accounting is hiring a lot right now. So it's a great time to be in school. And even if you're already working from somewhere and you get your MTax, it's a great time to switch. I'm going to be completely honest. The value increases that we're seeing right now in salaries and signing bonuses are higher than I've ever seen in my career. So, take advantage of it. You're not going to get a pay cut in the future, so get as much money as you can right now. In terms of interviewing, like Kim was saying, the initial interviews, especially for entry level, is mostly kind of personality based, and I don't mean that as like, will we be best friends? It's just come in relaxed and ready to talk. If I ask you a question about TCJA, like Christian was asked, and you don't know what I'm talking about, don't lie. Don't try to make something up. Just say, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. That was 3 years ago. Even 5 years ago now. So, you might not be totally aware of everything that changed in TCJA, and just be honest about it. Be yourself. And if it's not a good fit, everybody's hiring, so don't get nervous. There's somewhere that you will land. I promise you.
That's excellent advice about being your genuine self. Yeah. And I know for certain that every semester I hear from the firms, it doesn't matter what size the firm, do you have any tax students? We're hiring. So there is a huge demand and a very small supply of tax professionals. So again, if you want to specialize in something that is going to give you job security, then tax is definitely the way to go. Our track record for placement out of the program has been around 100%. I think the only time we haven't had 100% placement is if we've had international students that had visa requirements. So we are finding more often than not that the firms are not willing to be sponsors if you have visa needs, and that's not a function of the MTax. It's across the board. So whether you do audit and assurance, tax, consulting, whatever, that may be a hurdle for you coming out of a program. Okay, so we have a question in the chat box. How quickly did you advance in your career soon after completing your MTax, and what are the typical return on investment? So we know that the program is not inexpensive by any means. Ms. Highfill, who's our recruiter, she does have a list of scholarship opportunities. We also have scholarships via School of Accountancy, and those are via application in the spring semester. So you wouldn't get it in your entering semester, but you would be eligible for application if you have a 3.0 or higher in spring. And these are not nominal. So we have a very generous MTax alumni who so far has donated since I have been back at state, fall of 2018. And we've been able to give $5,000 scholarships to several of our MTax students. So, don't waft on it and say, oh, I don't have time to apply, I'm not going to get it. You don't know that until you apply, so make sure you avail yourselves of that. But relative to the professionals, return on investment, how quickly did you progress within your organization?
So I'm not sure that I can speak fully to that because I already employed when I was in the MTax program. But I do know that from the recruiting side, at my old firm and well, we always looked at the MTax students as being a little bit above the other programs around the state, around the country, that kind of stuff. It's just a very particular program that's very valuable in students. So I know that was something that definitely we saw.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll say you might get a little bit more in the first few years, or you might get a bump if you're already working and you complete the MTax. So the ROI, as it's asked, is not immediate. It's more once you get to like a manager level and you have the MTax and you have the ability to do things that other managers don't, that you really distinguish yourself. And that's where the real increases in pay come. I mean, I can tell you there are people at my same level who don't have an MTax who I could pay for an MTax every year with what I make over what they make. And then, if you wanted to do the joint MTax and LLM, the attorneys make that much more than me. So that if you wanted to do both, that makes that much more. But it's a little bit down the road. I would say like about 5 years, you would really see that separation happen.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true across the board, whether it's tax or some other area in accounting. And I think most students, I appreciate you messaging that, Michael, because I don't think most students know that. They're looking at that entry level salary and not looking at T+5 or T+10. But I would say usually at 5 years out, that's going to be a pivotal interchange, and where you're going to see some changes in salary, particularly if you stayed at the same firm and are ingrained in the culture there. Yeah. Okay, anybody else on the panel?
I mean, as far as career advancement or switching careers, I think mine was a little quicker because I was able to, I completed in December and I got a tax job in December. So I was able to switch almost within the same month. I'll say maybe 1 month or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so for Christian, he was working at company A, we won't name it, and doing database management. And then once he was near the completion of the program, he changed companies and started working in tax analytics. So that created a salary differential for him. Yeah. Okay, so Ren, thanks so much for joining us. And I know, let's see who was, so Roan, you needed the link from Ren. So if you'll grab her email address there in the chat box, then you can follow up with her about the internship opportunities. Okay, well, that concludes my planned set of questions. So now, and thank you, Kim. I appreciate your time as well. I know you're very, very busy with tax provision stuff. So thank you very much. And what I want to talk a bit about, we'll segue with something that Kim said relative to expectations using Excel. So I think the gold standard historically relative to technology, very loosely construed, was that students had the capacity to complete pivot tables and VLOOKUPs in Excel. And that needle has now moved. So for accounting majors, the expectation is that you have some experience or knowledge of what the firms are referring to as desktop applications. And so we have a capstone course in the MTax program now for data analytics, and Christian and Ren were in that class back in the fall. And we do a myriad of things. So we do a little bit of regression analysis in that course also, but we definitely utilize Tableau, which is a data visualization software. We utilize a data wrangling program known as Alteryx. A lot of the firms are using that, and even some major corporations are currently using Alteryx because they have to get data together to send to the public accounting firm. And then we had a couple of programs that we used for robotic process automation, and that was Automation Anywhere and UiPath. So you're going to get that exposure in the MTax program that you're not going to get in our MPA program. It is not as robust as our MTax program regarding analytics. This is extremely important for the changes in the CPA exam. So now I'm going to speak to that. The changes in the CPA exam are effective in January of 24. So you've heard from all the panelists the importance of trying to complete the CPA exam as quickly as possible. Well, you just need to ratchet that up by 100% now because the exam's getting ready to change. So the model for the new CPA exam is based in the field of engineering. So if you know any engineers, there's mechanical, civil, and I forget what the electrical, I think are the three common varieties for engineers. So our CPA exam is now going to have a core exam that everyone takes. And I would say for the most part, that is analogous to the existing exam format. Then the exam taker self-selects an area of specialization or certification, okay? One of those is tax and planning. Another is what we would probably relate to audit and assurance, if you will. And then there's one that is more heavily involved regarding analytics and internal controls and that kind of thing. So, like an IT audit type person. So there's a transition period, and I think it's NASBA has already released the schematic. So if you have not completed the BEC section, they are translating BEC to one of these certification areas. So you would have to pick one of the certification areas and sit for that. So my personal perception is that, you know, the core is the exam as we've always known it. You can take it as soon as you're finished with your bachelor's degree, but to be able to achieve success in one of those certification areas, that is where the graduate degree is going to be essential. So if you plan to do tax, again, the MTax sets you apart historically and during this transition period. And then as we move into the new CPA exam format, the MTax is going to set you up for success in that certification area for taxation and planning. As I mentioned earlier, you've got to have the 120 hours to sit the plus 30 hours of accounting at the advanced level is required for your licensure. So you can pass all of the CPA exam and still not be licensed if you haven't completed that 30 upper level hours. Plus, Georgia requires 1 year of experience under a licensed CPA. So your supervisor has to be a licensed CPA. And I know we border a few states here in Georgia. I'm licensed in Florida. I will tell you, if you're planning to go to Florida, make sure that you talk to me, because Florida is a very picky state. Historically, it was one of the original states that had a 150-hour requirement. And actually, you had to have that to sit for the exam back then. And, but they changed their rule too, because it's a revenue generator. If students sit at 120 hours and then get licensed later. And so, it's that timings earnings management game, if you know what I'm talking about. But in Florida, you have to have an additional business law course. So, make sure you know what is required. You can find out that information for each of the states at NASBA, NASBA.org, O-R-G. Okay, so that gives you a little more about the CPA exam. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was curriculum and our faculty. So all of our faculty, and literally 100% of us, have practical or professional tax experience. Some of us, it's a few years, like myself. And then others, it's upwards of 30 years experience. So we truly have expertise in our program. Your first two classes, the required courses are Advanced Fed Tax, which is a survey of business entities, and then tax research. So I teach Advanced Fed Tax, and Professor Schmill, who used to be full-time with us and is now retired, she still teaches part-time. She teaches the tax research course, and she was an editor for Tax Analyst, and she's also a practicing attorney. Then in the spring, our required standalone corporate class is taught by a senior manager from Coca-Cola, Dave MacArthur. And our practice and procedure course, recently retired EY partner, used to work at the IRS, Mark Messler. In the spring, we usually offer the elective international tax. That's Don Dismuke. He's a partner at Dixon Hughes and Goodman. In the summer, we typically offer our state and local course, and that's Veronica Caputo. She's a recently admitted partner at Grant Thornton. And then in the fall, the required courses are accounting for income taxes. And that is Erin Connick, who is Kim. She's now off the call, but at UPS. Erin worked at PwC and has been at UPS as long or longer than the PwC years. And so Erin is the treasurer and director for accounting for income taxes at UPS. And I also failed to mention Dave MacArthur worked at Deloitte for a while before he went to Coca-Cola. And our partnership standalone class, that's taught by EY partner, and that is Mike Rapaski. So you can see by the employer location and the level within the organization that we have some very skilled faculty within the program. And then we offer some other electives. Usually it's based on student preference because we're a very selective program and we're small in number, so we can't offer every elective every semester. So we try to garner the masses and offer the elective, other electives in the appropriate terms. So that gives you some more information about the CPA exam. and then about the program itself. And we have a question in the chat box about recommend doing the 150 hours first. No. And our panelists have indirectly said the same thing to you. So they said, take the exam as soon as you're eligible, which means after your bachelor's degree. Okay. So Ren mentioned sitting for FAR first. My recollection is Ren did not have an undergrad degree in accounting. So that may be like the challenge section for her. Whereas for students that do have the undergrad accounting degree, your intermediate, AKA financial reporting series, should be sufficient for you to take FAR. Okay. For reg, the preponderance of the tax questions relate to business entities. So you want to take reg as soon as you complete the advanced Fed tax course, which we offer that in all 3 of our graduate programs. And again, BEC is eventually going away, but that's one that you could take early on. That's my recollection is cost accounting and economics in that, and then an audit. Okay, so then audit, again, your undergrad audit course should be sufficient to sit for the audit section as well. So again, you want to make that CPA exam go away as quickly as possible. Voice of experience, self. So I waited to sit, granted everything was different back then. So you had to sit for the entire exam in 1 week. You couldn't sit for one section at a time. And I waited to sit for the exam after I completed my graduate degree. I had secured a job at what was then a Big 8 firm in Jacksonville, Florida. So I needed licensure in Florida. I couldn't sit, I wasn't eligible to sit until I had the 150 hours. And then my purview though was, oh, I'll have a lot more time to study and sit for the exam when I start working in public accounting. That was not true. So my last busy season, and now granted I was an auditor before I was a tax professional, I was audit side of the house. My last busy season, 70 to 80 hours a week. I left my town home so early in the morning that the dry cleaners were closed, and I came home so late at night that the dry cleaners were closed. So my roommate had to help me out with my dry cleaning during busy season. Yeah, so busy season can be grueling, but it's also rewarding. Okay, so I've chatted quite a bit. I want to see if we have any questions remaining from our participants, and if we don't hear from anyone, then if the panelists have anything at all other that they would like to share with us. So any questions from our participants?
Hey, Dr. Lynn, I noticed that you just said that busy season can be pretty grueling. When you were starting out, did you have a chance to work maybe 6 days a week during the busy season? Because I'm just wondering personally, because I have a kind of religious exception to make, but you know, I can work probably 6 days a week.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and that's something that you want to ask as you're meeting prospective employers. Now, granted, I worked in public accounting over 30 years ago. I just dated myself, didn't I? But when I was in the busy season, basically our Monday through Thursday was 7 in the morning until 8 or 9 at night, Friday 7 to 5, Saturday usually 9 to 3, and then Sundays half day. And we were working 7 days a week. I was working on our largest insurance client at the firm. So busy season was really busy. It was a major insurance company with its own internal audit department. So, you know, it depends on the client base. If you're working in public accounting, I would say, you know, for the most part, my experience when I worked in corporate accounting relative to work-life balance was much, much better, except I was always in compliance roles. I was a director in the tax department, and I was responsible for our information returns. So I pulled a couple of all-nighters in corporate. I never pulled an all-nighter in public accounting, but that was like one day out of the year. And then the rest of my life is pretty normal in a corporate environment. But, you know, we've got professionals here who are much younger than me and more in tune with what's happening in the firms and the corporations right now. So maybe if our panelists could address the work-life balance and expectations within your respective organizations.
Yeah, first, I'll say we're very attuned to religious beliefs and needing to take any time off. You can bring it up in the interview process if you want to make sure that everybody's aware, but I don't know, to me, that kind of seems like, yeah, we're gonna understand. You don't need to like bring that. We totally understand. So if you're off Saturdays or you're off Wednesdays, that's totally okay. The work needs to get done. And so whatever days that you do it, that's great. Some firms are pretty rigid on their schedules. I think most are moving to way more flexible hours. I know Crow has been for a long time. I personally could never work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I used to have like a job where I had to get to 8 o'clock meetings every day, and that was tough for me. I like to start about 9:30 and then, take some time off in the afternoon, and then I work late. I like working Sundays as opposed to Saturdays, and firms are comfortable with that as long as you get your work done on time.
Yeah. So again, I think it's the culture of the firm. So Michael, you're in a good place, I can tell.
Yeah.
But we do have a participant. So Sarah posted, she's working at a top 5 accounting firm and they work 7 days a week as an associate. So again, it has to do with firm culture. So these are the things that you want to be asking the professionals when you're interacting with them. Well, what's your typical schedule during busy season? That's pretty open-ended, and I'm sure they're going to be honest with you.
I will say, if I can interject, one thing is that every firm is different, even in their hours requirements, even in their, some firms don't have as crazy busy seasons. It also depends on kind of what you're doing. And, for me, at DSG, I was busier in the fall than the spring. And so it just kind of depends, but I will say, just like you guys have said already, everybody seems to be fairly flexible in that, especially in the new model of work, working from home, not working from home, that kind of stuff. It is definitely flexible.
So Mercedes, what's it look like at Grant?
Yes, it's very similar to what Mark just stated, being that I'm fairly new. Like I said, I just started in October. Grant Thornton requires you to be online from 8:30 to 5:30. There are some mornings I may get up willingly to start early to get a head start on work. It depends on the engagements that you're on. There may be a rush deadline, so you have to put in those hours, those nights, and maybe a weekend to get it done. But it's not overly stressful. And as you tenure in the firm, Grant Thornton allows flex schedules, and some associates and managers, they may work only 3 days a week, and then they're off the rest, or 4 days a week. They tailor their schedule to their personal lives. So there's open opportunity to not have that dreadful experience. It's always talked about in public accounting. Grant Thornton allows a lot of flexibility, but we do have a blackout period from January 31st to April 18th, no PTO, unless it's, a wedding or a death in the family, something serious. But other than that, it's pretty good.
Great, thank you. And then Christian, how is it in a corporate environment? You have good work-life balance?
Yeah, we basically do it Monday to Friday, and you get to, during the Monday to Friday, you just have to complete what you are assigned. So you are assigned a couple of cases, and you have to make sure you're able to do it during the day, and the time that you use in doing it is not really well concerned to them. Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, so I think that that got all the panelists because Kim and Ren had to leave. We've got a question in the chat box. So I'll give my insights, but our panelists, some of you may have been in similar situations, so you may have better information than me. But Brave posted the question, completed undergrad in 2012. With a 10-year gap, I'm trying to transition back into accounting. What recommendation do you have for preparation for internships or MTax program? Would this be a possibility for someone in my particular situation? So for internships, I'm not really the best person to speak to that. And so maybe some of our panelists can offer some insights. But as far as the MTax program, you know, if you satisfy the admission requirements, it doesn't matter how far removed you are from that undergraduate experience, you'll be admitted to the program. What I do recommend, and I'll put it in the chat box after I stop talking because I'm getting older and my multitasking skills aren't as good as usual. But there's something called accountingprinciples.com. And it's a free resource. You want to work the first module, which is the accounting cycle. It's got free quizzes, outlines, notes, things like that. So it's a good refresher for basic accounting knowledge. So I would recommend that. If your undergrad degree is not accounting, then you need Principles 1, which is, or Principles of Financial, Principles 2, also known as Principles of Managerial, and an introductory U.S. federal income tax course. So sometimes we get international students and we have them take the U.S. Fed tax course because things are different in the U.S. than elsewhere. So that's my 2 cents, but maybe if some of the panelists could talk about internships, if you've had a gap between your undergrad experience and now you're trying to get into the tax arena.
Yeah. I think my situation will be similar, but I can give an example with the MTax because I completed my undergrad in 2008 in Ghana. So there's that international switch and then everything. But I think the most important thing is you can do it. It's possible. Just make sure the prerequisites, the first 2 courses that you do, you take them serious because some of them will be running through most of the courses, the principles that you learn.
I agree with Christian. I'm a similar situation as well. I finished undergraduate in 2012 and started the InTax program in 2019. So I did have a gap there. Being that I had a family, I wasn't able to do internships, but my networking skills, as far as networking with my colleagues and networking with the professors, landed me that public accounting job that I wanted after graduation. So I would say brush up on your skills like Dr. Jones provided that resource and network heavily so that you can make that transition very easily.
Excellent advice. Anybody else on the panel want to offer anything?
So just don't let it get in your way, and don't like stigmatize yourself over the fact that you've had the gap. Some of the best people that we hire have been doing something entirely different for 10 years and they have real world experience. They have better time management. They know how to communicate better. And like, I don't have to work on training them on all those things and we can focus on the tax stuff. So I love hiring people that have been doing something else for a while because you're more ready to hit the ground running usually.
Yeah, and that made me think of something. So part of my background, I ended up starting my own business and I went back for a second master's degree to pick up additional tax courses because I wanted to do other than individual tax work in my practice. And I will say, being a non-traditional student, I was in my 30s then, I probably put more pressure on myself than anyone else did. So give yourself a break. You know, you're probably going to be your worst enemy in the MTAX program if you're in that non-traditional student category. So, you know, take a deep breath, you know, do something fun or nice for yourself, that kind of thing, you know, just so it doesn't become overwhelming and stressful. Yeah.
One thing that I can kind of piggyback off basically what everyone said is that, you know, as when you come in to an internship, or when I've dealt with interns and trained interns, I found that, you know, we can teach you everything you need to know about preparing a tax return. We can teach you those kinds of things. It's a little bit more difficult to teach you how to be a professional or something like that. So, like it's been said, I think any prior work experience will help you tremendously in that. You can learn the tax returns, you can learn that kind of stuff on the fly when you're actually.
Thank you. All right, well, we only have a few minutes left, and Mark, we are waving bye to Mercedes. She posted in the chat box that she needed to go for a 1:30 call. So we just have a few minutes left. Are there any pressing questions from our participants before we wrap things up? I'm not hearing anything, and I don't see anything in the chat box. So thank you again to our panelists, our MTAX alums. So proud of you guys, and we greatly appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. I want to thank all of our participants on the call. Again, I'm Dr. Lynn Jones, the MTAX Program Director. So if you have any program questions, I am the person that you should contact, and my email is lcjones@gsu.edu. And if you are interested in applying to the MTAX program, Ms. Highfill is currently our recruiter out of our Graduate Student Services Center. And so she would be the person to contact relative to program admission and consideration. Okay, so you're welcome, Roan. Thank you again, everyone. And I want to thank Ms. Thomas, who is from Career Advancement Center, for organizing this and Handshake and getting our registration set up. They do a phenomenal job. Earlier in the chat, she posted an email where you can obtain additional information about the mentoring opportunities that we have at State. So if you'll scroll up and grab that before we end the call, if you're interested. And with that, we'll call it a wrap, and I'll say goodbye and thank you again, and hope to see you in the fall.
Thanks for having us on.
Take care.